Good afternoon, esteemed traders and investors. Today is Monday, July 13th. I present to your attention another market review for InstaForex. As always, I'm glad to be here with you today. So, our trading ideas for gold and the euro-dollar have started to play out. Let's take a look at the list of news for this week. There are no important news releases today. Tomorrow we have inflation data for the dollar, and on Wednesday the interest rate decision for the Canadian dollar, the producer price index PPI, and on Thursday the unemployment claims and the core retail sales index. There is no news on Friday. Let's see what we can trade on the charts. Let's get started. So, let's begin with gold quotes, which opened the trading week with a fierce drop. But let me remind you that my main trading idea right now is to go long, and not because the market is falling. It's because the instrument has left a gap at the level of $4,218 per troy ounce. This is a double top over the past 3 weeks. I believe it needs to be taken out. And today, the instrument dropped by 2,000 right at the open. Actually, it fell even more and then tested back up. By the way, on the 15-minute chart, it tested the long break zone and is slowly trying to recover, already breaking the short structure. I think it's a good idea to look for long positions from the current levels and higher. Within the framework of this large three-wave structure that I showed last week, the main target is these two peaks. I hope that here something can be achieved. Today there was an interesting situation on the 1-minute chart. By the way, we traded this long break. At this point, with 105 contracts, it's already bringing in 2. I think this is just the beginning, but there are still short breaks ahead that could be tested. The euro-dollar pair today, despite a low opening, shot up impressively. But again, for me, it's absolutely not surprising because the long break zone from July 2nd was finally fully tested, and the instrument is gradually moving upward. Let me remind you that the trading idea here is the same. Just like with gold, there are still debts left on the weekly time frame at the levels of 114 and 737. I hope these debts will be settled today or tomorrow, at least partially. We have a decent absorption from the long break zones, and I think stop losses are pretty much worthless here. Sellers are positioned behind the levels 1.14629 and 1.14737. And if you haven't bought yet, of course, you haven't, but if you get a pullback, although most likely you won't, then you could try to catch a move further, aiming for a new weekly high in the British pound, US dollar pair from the perspective of the weekly time frame. We don't have a time frame, but what we do have, let's remove the unnecessary numbers, is roughly the same, a weekly zone at the level of 1.34554. This is also a monthly level that hasn't been broken, and it's worth hunting for as well. That's what this instrument offers, such opportunities. You could say that right now, after this bullish initiative that has just occurred for us. As it pulls back into the Asian long break zone, it might sweep through the stop losses of sellers who are positioned just behind it. This isn't the only level, there's still room for further growth here. I think it will all be quite interesting in correlation with the euro and gold, because essentially that's what we're trading.
Looking for real trading advantages? InstaForex offers the lowest spreads and commissions. On major currency pairs, our conditions are better. Lower spreads and only $5 commission instead of $7. That's real savings for every trader. And now, let's get back to the market review.
The US dollar market. Dollar Canadian, despite its bullish momentum, has lost some steam. By the way, it took out the lower zone. I think that's good news for you, but for now, it's not generating anything interesting. Let me remind you, the lower area has been taken out, but the upper one hasn't yet, and I don't see any bullish breaks at the moment. As for the dollar yen, last week the dollar yen closed in a kind of uncertainty. By the way, it left the money at the highs and still hasn't taken them. On the 4th time frame, which I'm now heroically shrinking, the instrument is thrashing around like a Japanese fish, in search of a pattern, and there's already a new bullish break. Let me remind you, it's not the first one, and God willing, not the last. A series of these breaks is giving rise to a new bullish trend, which I'm sure will lead to another update of historical highs for this instrument. At the moment, the instrument has already tested the bullish break zone. By the way, it continues to move back and forth between the breaks, and those who set limit orders have already made some money here.
I also want to remind you that every InstaForex client automatically receives loss insurance. For every $1 of compensation, Only $4 of your friend's investments are required. Just submit a request, and your losses will be recovered. Let's continue with the review.
As for oil after another round of strikes, exchanges between Iran, American and Israeli strikes is correcting, and basically for those who are ready to try their luck with a long from the pullback on the gap that we see, you can give it a shot. Into a structure like this, roughly around 71.50, give or take. Of course, they might not give us such prices, but overall, the gap happened, there was a pullback, and then you can try to play a move towards the gap. Bitcoin. Last week, Bitcoin did not give us any short breakdown zones. By the way, it tested the long side perfectly on the 4th time frame and is trying to grow. From the perspective of stop hunting, there is still room to grow. That's why I'm in favor of growth for this instrument, because there's still quite a lot of liquidity here that hasn't been taken yet. On the weekly time frame, you can hunt for the extremes of the past month and even for the June ones as well. So I'm in favor of longs. It would be logical to see this kind of scenario develop, relying on the long side support. So regarding the US stock market, the S&P 500 closed last week with a logical follow-through absorbing the week before last. In other words, the week before last was an engulfing week, last week was a pullback and closed higher. Not all the extremes above have been taken yet. Here, on the 4-hour time frame, what do we have? There was a retest of the previous long side breakout. We moved up and there was a slight new high here. But those who had the opportunity to close on Friday did not close. Technically, it's a nice setup for longs, but I don't see it here yet, so we'll skip this instrument for now.
With InstaForex, you can triple your profit. For every $4 of your friend's investments, you automatically get an extra $1 added to your profit, with no extra conditions.
The dollar franc closed last trading week with an inside semi-engulfing bar. There is room to grow here, judging by the highs of the last 2 weeks. From the perspective of pullback zones, the instrument was breaking down. At the end of last week, it was testing. By the way, it might retest the long side breakout zone again, just a bit higher. The first targets can be set at the liquidity grabs from last week and the week before. As for the Canadian franc, moving on to cross instruments, I'm interested in the grid trading method, but I don't want to use it on this instrument. It's time to start building a grid of limit buy orders. Australian dollar is pressing down, trying to break through the lows of the past few weeks. I think it's just around the corner, and that's exactly what will happen. The New Zealand franc didn't give us a chance to buy below the year's low, so we're leaving it alone for now. The New Zealand tourism sector is closing a 3-wave structure and bringing our idea of closing the grid of limit sell orders, which we set up half a year ago, closer to realization. Euro, Australian dollar, if it falls below the year's low, we'll start building a grid of limit buy orders.
We also have a great offer. Fund your account and get a 30% tradable bonus. Trade with additional capital and expand your opportunities with InstaForex.
And euro, Canadian dollar. It's dormant. As long as it's within the range, we're not touching it. We'll sell above the 2025 high using a grid. Silver. Silver is behaving very strangely. It's also trying to mimic gold's trends. Let's apply a clean template to it. From the perspective of stop hunting, there's already a lot of money both below and above. Above though, it's only for 1 week. In other words, there aren't any clear signal bars. The instrument isn't giving any nice clear picture. But for now, the long break zone hasn't been broken. And with last week's low not taken out, I think longs are still quite relevant here. Well, at the very least, a 1-to-1 move from this long break zone. Friends, InstaForex offers a free consultation with a personal trading consultant. Follow the link in the video description, fill out the callback form, and gain access to exclusive offers and special trading conditions, BRT Plus, for risk-free trading. That's all. Trade with InstaForex, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for new reviews.